This old guy DIY video has to do with installing a Volquartsen firing pin for a 30-year-old Ruger 1022. In the previous video I went through the problems I was having with light strikes and the 22 shells not firing. So I still have the 4 shells that were in question, and right now I'm going to put this Volquartsen firing pin into the gun. It's a pretty straightforward process. The first step is just loosen up this screw on the barrel band. And then when that's loose, I take a screwdriver, put it in here and just twist it to the side so there's enough room for the band to come off the barrel without scratching it. And then the second thing is to remove the screw here. So I'll do that right now, come back to you. Now with the barrel band removed and that screw loosened up that goes into the receiver, this is what the assembly looks like. Now it's just a matter of taking a punch and pushing this pin out and this pin out. And on this old gun, this pin falls out on its own every time I disassemble it. Now when you tap the pins out of here, the trigger block comes out, and you see that sitting here. To remove the firing pin block assembly there, you just pull back all the way, and then with your other hand, pick up on that silver piece of steel that houses the firing pin, and it'll come right out. This is what the inside of the receiver looks like now. And then this little roll pin right here has to be tapped out so we can get to the firing pin. So it doesn't matter which side you tap it out from, but we need to tap that roll pin out. And the hack I mentioned in my last video is if you don't have the right size punch, you can just pick one of these titanium made in China type drill bits, find a size that's correct, and you can use that thing as a punch. So now I'll just put my hand here just to hold the assembly together, pull the drill bit out, and then I can slide the firing pin back a little bit, and all you have left is a firing pin and a little spring. And you can see when I pulled the pin out, the firing pin assembly came back because there's a little spring in there holding that in place. So if we just dump that out, there you go. Those are our 2 components. And one thing I can see immediately, the firing pin on the left is a Volquartsen, the one on the right is the OEM. And you can see how that Volquartsen has kind of a beveled tip to it, where the OEM was straight. And on the OEM over the years it kind of got peened, so it doesn't make proper contact, and therefore it looks like this Volquartsen is going to get in there and hit it harder on less surface area, so we should get more force on less surface area. Now it's time to install it. Installation is pretty straightforward. You just drop the spring into that little slot first, and then starting from the rear of the assembly, drop the firing pin in, and when you slide it forward, the hole lines up where the pin has to go through. You can see this thing comes back with the spring pressure, so that's all good. Now it's time to reinstall the pin, put it together, and reassembly is just the opposite of what I did to tear it apart. Put this little pin in, put this thing back into the receiver by pulling this back, dropping this assembly back into place. Then you put the trigger assembly back in with those 2 pins, insert the receiver and barrel assembly into the stock, and then it'll be ready to try to fire those same 4 shells that I failed with a week ago. Now the Volquartsen firing pin is in there. You can see that that thing only takes up about half of the width that the other firing pin had. So before we had a certain amount of force applied to a certain amount of area, and now that area is only half as big, so I suspect it results in more force being applied to that 22 shell casing. And these are the same 4 shells. You can see how they're kind of deformed from being whacked multiple times. But these are the 4 shells that failed with the OEM firing pin. Now I'm going to put these things into a magazine, insert it, take 4 shots and see if they go. Well, here's the test of those 4 shells that wouldn't fire before. First one, no. Here's the second one. No. Here's the third one. No. Here's the fourth one. Nope. Well, it seems my assumptions were flawed. These are the shells that had failed prior to the firing pin change. And when I took them and tried them today, they failed again. And I'd never had 22 ammo fail before. And I took some out of this box of Winchester ammo, and that box may also be 20 years old, I'm not sure. And I tried 4 of those and they wouldn't fire. And then when I went and grabbed a new box of these Remington 22s that I bought a couple of years ago, and I put a mag of those things through, and they fire like nobody's business. So, looks like I got ahead of myself when I saw how beaten up some of these cases were. Having never seen that in 50-some years of living, I told myself it had to be the firing pin, but the firing pin was doing just fine apparently, the old OEM one. And it in fact was ammo that may have been exposed to humidity over the years, whatever happened to it in the last 20 or 30 years. When I needed it, it didn't go boom. So now I have that box that's suspect. I just fired these Remington Thunderbolts with no issue. And whether it needs it or not, this old Ruger 1022 has a new Volquartsen firing pin. So I hope this video helped you, and have a great day.